When it comes to a real estate transaction, there's no monkeying around. It's the real estate show. Welcome to the Real Estate Show. My name is Rick Naples. I am the owner-broker of Zone Realty, LLC. You zone your home. Well, as I said in the beginning of the show, or I should say my friend here said, there's no monkeying around when it comes to the real estate market. And on today's show, I'm going to talk about buyers and sellers and some of the problems that might arise as you're trying to get to a closing. You know, as a realtor, I get asked a lot of questions as to what do I do in case of, or what do I do in case of this. So there's a lot of different answers because it depends really on the situation. Let's talk about the transaction itself. When a buyer finds a home that they wish to purchase and they've made an offer and that offer has been accepted, what happens from that point on? Well, we know that the transaction is going to start to go into a process. And that process has to complete a certain number of steps before you get to the closing table. And there's many points during that process where a buyer may decide to back out of the deal. Now, we've seen, unfortunately, because of the way the market was stimulated by the COVID issue and the low inventories and mortgage rates going up, a lot of buyers getting into a frenzy and making offers on houses that were a little higher than what the market could support. And this leads me to one of the very first reasons why a buyer might back out of the deal. And that's because they can't get the mortgage. In other words, they made an offer on a house, they bid over, let's say, asking, and the appraisal has come in by the bank and the house just does not appraise at that higher value. So now the buyer is faced with the choice of coming up with the cash to make up the difference or backing out of the deal. Now let me caution everybody here. When you sign a contract to purchase a home, most of the time, if you don't follow through to the closing of that purchase of the home, you're going to lose the deposit you put down on the house. Now let me talk about deposits. Your realtor will guide you as far as how much money to put down as earnest money to show your intent to follow through and close on that purchase. And one of the many jobs that realtors do is to protect the interest of their buyer. So if you're planning to put 20% or 30% down on a house, usually your realtor will tell you, don't put all that money at risk right up front. You want to give a small but a serious earnest money deposit or deposit with your offer. That could be anywhere from, say, $500 to $1,000, maybe $2,000. And the reason why that's done is if anything should happen where the deal goes sideways or the deal's not going to happen or you need to back out of the deal, you don't want to have that much of your money at risk, because there's many times that the seller will not refund the deposit. You're going to lose it. So make sure you're comfortable with that amount of money that you're going to provide when you make your offer. So if the offer is accepted, you know that that money's at risk in case you need to back out of the deal. Now, getting back to what I was talking about. If you have a bid on a house that's over the market value and it does not appraise, as I said, you're either going to have to come up with the cash difference or you're going to have to go back to the negotiation table and try to renegotiate the deal. And most of the time, the sellers had other offers on the table, so they're not going to be willing to go back and renegotiate and lower the price. They'll turn to someone that has the ability to be able to pay that cash difference. Now, what other situations might happen that would cause you as a buyer to back out of the deal besides the financing not coming together? Well, you have the right to do a home inspection. And let's say you hire an inspector and the inspector goes through the house. Now, all puns put aside, let's talk about the gorilla in the room. If an inspection shows there are issues with the home, whatever those issues might be, and they're major issues, you can go back to the seller and ask the seller to attend to or fix or remedy those issues. And sometimes the seller will say no, they can't do it. And that falls back in your court to decide whether you want to go through and purchase the home and then be responsible for remedying those issues. Now, a lot of times if the issue is a big one, like for instance the roof needs to be replaced or the furnace is shot and it's not providing heat or something along those lines, that can also put your financing in jeopardy. Because you see, the bank's not going to do the risk of putting a mortgage on a property if the property is not in moving condition. So there's another reason why you may have to back out of the deal, because you can't come to terms as far as the inspection issues are concerned. There are some other reasons why a buyer would need to back out of their purchase. In other words, when they've made that offer and it's been accepted. One of the unforeseen ones is sometimes people will buy their next house and they're basing their down payment money and ability to afford the house they want to buy on the sale of the present house that they own. But what happens if the house that they own does not sell? Well, some buyers may be in a situation where they can support two mortgages and they could close on the house they wish to purchase and support the other house until it does eventually sell. But a lot of times the buyer will get nervous about the market and say, geez, if my house is not selling, perhaps I shouldn't go forward with the purchase of this particular house. And they'll back out of the deal. Now again, what I'm talking about here, these situations may cause you to lose your deposit, so keep that in mind. There are a couple of other reasons that you may have to back out of a deal once you've contracted to purchase a home, besides the not getting a mortgage or inspection issues or not being able to sell your own home. And those could be unforeseen things. There could be a change in the family dynamics. There could be a change in your life. Or you could simply just panic. Let's take a look at this presentation and I'll be back to talk a little bit more about how the market's gone ape and the gorillas in the room. I'm talking here on the Real Estate Show about backing out of a deal and some of the situations that may happen that will cause you not to move forward with the purchase of the home that you have won the bid on. Now let's talk about the contingencies aspect. As I said, if you go and you do a home inspection, sometimes inspection issues do come up, and you cannot come to an agreement with the seller on getting those issues attended to. Or there could be a contingency that the seller put in the acceptance of that offer that perhaps you cannot follow through on. Let's say, for instance, you've made an offer on a house and you've overbid on that particular house, and you're a cash buyer and there's no mortgage involved, so we don't have to worry about a financing or appraisal issue. And the seller, for one reason or another, says to you they've changed their mind. Now you have offered over the asking price, you're offering cash, and all of a sudden the seller says they've changed their mind. Or they've conditioned the contract in that they themselves, the seller, must find another home that they can purchase and move into. In other words, they can't go through with the closing until they have a place to go. Now the place to go could be a house that they're looking to purchase, or maybe they have a plan where they're going to go stay with relatives for a while, or rent, or whatever the deal might be. But if there's a situation where the seller cannot find a place to go, the deal's going to fall apart. Now, in that particular case, your earnest money, or the money that you've put down, you most likely will get returned to you, because it's not you, the buyer, that's backing out. It's the seller that has decided to back out because of a situation that they're experiencing. But getting back to that home inspection. Let's say, for instance, that the home inspector has gone in and it's an older home and the furnace is wrapped in that old asbestos style mud, and there are asbestos insulation on the heating pipes running through the basement. And you're concerned about that, and you want to have that asbestos removed. Well, the seller has to agree to remove that, and that could be quite expensive. So this is where the renegotiation comes in, and you try to come to an agreement that works out for both you, the buyer, and the seller. Perhaps you look at what the cost would be to remove all that asbestos, and you go back to the seller and say, hey, here's what the cost is. Will you split that cost with me? Or perhaps the seller agrees to do it all. Or you just move forward and you decide that you're going to have it done. Let's say there's an issue with other plumbing in the house. Same thing. All items that come up in a home inspection usually are negotiable, but either one of them can break the deal if the buyer and the seller do not come to an agreement. Now, mind you, if a seller backs out of the deal, you may get your deposit back. If you as the buyer break the deal, you most likely will not get your deposit back. Now, why wouldn't you get a deposit back? The deal's not going to happen, right? Well, bottom line is, the seller's going to feel, well, I accepted your offer, I took your deposit in good faith, I've taken my house off the market, so I've lost other opportunities to sell it, time has gone by, I need to be compensated for that. So this is why your realtor will advise you not to put all of your money into the deal right up front. Just put down a small deposit, but an acceptable deposit. I'm not advising you folks to go and make an offer on a house and offer $10 down. That's not going to work. A seller's not going to accept that. They want to see something substantial. So usually $500, $1,000, $2,000, that's usually the amount of money that a seller will feel comfortable with in order to take their home off the market. And remember, you as a buyer have to be aware that that monies may be at risk should you back out of the deal. Let's take a look at this presentation. I'll be back to talk a little bit more about the market itself. I was making little puns and jokes in the beginning when I started to talk about the gorilla in the room. And what I was meaning about that is we all don't think about those situations that can make a deal go sideways or fall apart. There's an excitement. You know, you're out there as a buyer, you're looking for a house, you find something that works, you've made your offer, and the seller's accepted your offer, and now you're putting all the pieces together to become an owner of that home. And there's so many different points along the transaction where the deal can fall apart. Either you change your mind or the seller changes their mind. There are inspection issues, there are mortgage problems, there are appraisal concerns, all of these different things. And one of the biggest things that's happening now is as a buyer, you start to panic. You're looking at a huge commitment. You're purchasing a home. Yes, it's exciting. Yes, it is the next step maybe in your life. But it's a huge commitment. You're going to have a mortgage payment now. You're going to have to worry about property taxes, insurance. What about maintenance of the house? Do you have the tools that you need to maintain the house? Or do you have the finances in place to be able to handle what the house might need? So all these things might start to weigh on your mind and you'll have a panic. It's very common for buyers just before closing to start to have those particular thoughts. The remedy is just be prepared. Go into purchasing a house and don't get all excited about the house that you're purchasing without open eyes and an open mind. Make sure that you're buying a house that you know you're going to be comfortable, not only living in, but also maintaining and taking care of. You have to look at the whole picture and not just be focused on the one picture of that particular home. The markets themselves have been a little bit of a challenge. We've seen prices go all over the place. We've seen home prices rise very quickly. We saw the mortgage rates going up, although at this particular point in time they've kind of steadied out. In some cases have come down. We've seen bidding wars on houses where you get a bunch of people all trying to buy the same house. And they'll make offers against each other. Who's bidding this particular price? Who's going to give this much money over asking price? Who's structuring their deal in such a way where perhaps there are no contingencies? I will buy the house as is with all of its problems. I'll take it just the way it is for this price. Or contingencies that are things like it's a cash deal. We can close quickly. There's no mortgage involved. All of these things. So the sellers in these markets, even though it's a seller's market, are looking at what's the best deal for them in their situation. Now, I have to caution here. Sometimes on the seller's side, there's a little bit of, for lack of a better word, I don't want to call it greed, but there's more of an excitement of how much am I going to get for my house. I want to get a lot of money for my house. I want to get a premium dollar for my house. the market will support that. And the more money I make, the better it is for me, correct? Maybe not for the buyer, but for the seller. So they're going to choose an offer that not only makes sense, but also gives them the most money in their pocket. And a lot of times they want to sell their homes as is so that they don't have to pay for any repairs. So it's both the seller and the buyer that need to come together in order to come to terms in order to get to a closing. Now, what happens if you get to the closing table and an issue pops up? I've had a situation where that's happened to me, where all the parties have gotten to the closing table. We're in the room with our respective attorneys. We're ready to sign paperwork, and something last minute has come up that could make the deal fall apart. That most of the time is maybe something that hasn't been disclosed, that has been uncovered by the attorneys. What I mean by that is, let's say, title issues. A home has to transfer from one owner to the other owner free and clear of any encumbrances on the title. So if there's an old mortgage lien or perhaps a mechanic's lien, in other words, something was done on the house and the seller never paid the company that did that work and they filed a lien, even a realtor lien could be on the house. Those all have to be cleared. And sometimes those aren't found until a title search is done. And the title search, if it's not done right away, isn't done until the day of or day before the actual closing. So you go to the closing table and your attorney says to you, we can't close because there's an issue here we need to clear. And that may take a few extra days. This becomes a big issue, especially if you're in a situation where you've got the moving vans loaded and you're ready to close and move into the house you just purchased, and now it's going to be delayed 2 or 3 days. I've been in the business long enough where I've seen that happen. It's not fun. So there are last minute things that can cause a house not to close. Now, of course, those are not your fault, so most likely you're going to get your deposit money back. But you need to be aware that the deal's not done until all the paperwork is signed, the title transfers, and you become a homeowner. Buying a house is always a challenge. There's a number of different steps that you need to go through. Just follow those steps as closely as you can, and you'll find you will become a homeowner. My name is Rick Naples. This has been The Real Estate Show. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.
Welcome, I'm Nick Augustino. I'd like to welcome you to the Clam Box, where we do seafood our way. We got lobster roll, fried clams, fish and chip, fried shrimp, and our famous onion rings. We put a lot of precaution into the safety for you and your family. Not only do we use plexiglass at the cash register and sanitizer, we all wear gloves and we all keep a 6-foot distancing, and everybody must wear a mask. We carry all the options. We got DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, and of course, we got curbside where we bring it right to your car. Online ordering is available at clamboxnewbritain.com or by calling us at 860-357-3118. The Clam Box, 586 West Main Street, New Britain.